All right. Thanks for everybody for coming today and listening to this class. There'll be a lot of stuff in here. My signature program is called Midlife Momentum. So I'm going to share a bunch of stuff today, and I will just get right down to it here. So, whoop. So our agenda for today is, who is this for? What doesn't work in midlife? There's a lot of people out there that says what does work for midlife, but what doesn't work for midlife. I'm going to share my story a little bit, show you how I made the transformation from where I was to, where I wanted to be, and to to where I am right now, able to do four Spartan or one, two, three, four Ultra Beasts after 40. So that's pretty cool. My program has four different pillars. So you can love your midlife and beyond and flourish and thrive. And where do we go from here will be our topics of conversation today. So let's get it rolling. So a lot of people don't really need to start over. A lot of people just need to get their momentum back, especially after the holiday season. And when we're, 40 to 60, sometimes 30, and I'll talk more about that later, things kind of get heavier, foggier, flatter, and we lose connections with ourselves. And especially after rolling out from the holidays, we sit more, we have less movement, generally speaking. We stay up later at night and we eat heavier food. And I think some of you remember that in that 6-week period between or around Thanksgiving and Christmas, we tend to put on half of the weight that we're going to gain for the year in that time period. So Americans generally gain between 1 and 2 pounds of body fat over that 6 weeks from Thanksgiving to Christmas and New Year's. So pretty striking. So if you think about this, we're gaining this 1 to 2 pounds every single year. And next year, we're gaining 1 to 2 pounds. The year after, we're gaining 1 to 2 pounds. So think about it. After 30, let's just take 30, for example. If we go from 30 to 50 and we're gaining those 2 pounds, and that's just in that window, that's a lot of weight that we're adding just in fat, right? And when we roll out of these holidays, we're generally a little bit lazier. It's a little bit harder to get started. So this program, not only for the momentum after the holidays, but just to get your momentum back from where you might have been at some point in your life. So a lot of people like to blame aging, but that's not the real reason why we're losing momentum, right? We're losing momentum for a lot of other reasons. Compounding stress, eating wrong, not exercising the right way for our bodies, not having good relationships or not being able to manage those relationships or work very effectively. And we just blame it on aging. We're getting older. People just think you're supposed to get fatter and not be as mobile. So it doesn't really have to be that way. A lot of people in January, make these resolutions. So, hey, let's eat less. Hey, let's train harder. Let's push more. Those things are bound to fail. Eating less is very restrictive. Training harder is hard to sustain. Pushing more doesn't really help us very much. And beyond 40, beyond 50, eating less may not be supporting ourselves. Training harder might not be the things that we need to avoid injuries, So we need to be smarter about this. In your 20s, you were able to do a lot of hardcore things and your body bounced back really fast. But after 40, it doesn't bounce back as fast. Your body's different. It has different needs, and we need to treat it that way. When I was coming out of high school and in college, I would run 60 miles a week. That's a lot of miles. I could probably run 60 miles a week right this second. But am I going to be able to recover? Am I going to start getting, you know, wear and tear injuries? Um, and if I do, I'm not going to bounce back as fast as I did in my 20s. When you're in your 20s, you can do pretty much anything and you could heal up in not too short of a window. But in your 40s, it takes a long time. I have a client right now that, you know, didn't listen to their body. They went to the gym, they lifted too heavy, and they pulled a muscle. So now that person can't really exercise very effectively because it's got to wait for the injury to heal. So maybe in his 20s, that would have snapped back a lot faster and he could have got back on the wagon a lot faster. But he is, I think, in his late 40s now, and it doesn't rebound as fast. So we need to be smart about those things too. So, what's the cost of ignoring this? All right. So, if you forget about eating the right way and not exercising as hard or as long, then your energy starts to drop, which is counterproductive as what we think exercise and food should do. Weight creeps up. Your confidence erodes because you're not doing what you think you're able to do, and your relationships deteriorate. We start feeling bad about ourselves, then all of those other areas start to erode and drop off. That's not what I want. I don't want to be this depressive person looking out in this city wondering what happened. I want to know exactly what happened. Second thing that doesn't work is diets. There are people past 40 and 50 that go on diets. I know someone very close to my heart that goes on diets every 2 or 3 months. Then they wonder why the weight comes back on so fast. It's because diets actually make more friction in your life because you got to think about, oh, can I eat that? Can I eat that? Oh, is that in this diet? Oh, I need to save that for when I'm off the diet, so on and so forth. So it actually increases decision fatigue. So trying to navigate all that stuff, it's less sustainable. You can't be on a diet forever. I know Kayvon probably has gone down this path before. I have also, I've been on keto for a while, but it's not sustainable for me. All right. I can't do keto the rest of my life. That'd be nice. But it's not something that I can do, that I even want to do. For some people, very small percentage of people, they can stay on keto for a long time. Macro counting is another thing. Why don't diets work? Because they want you to count macros. Who wants to try to figure out all this garbage on how much of all of these things that you ate? Now, there is some usefulness of counting macros for a short period of time, just to kind of get an idea of where you are with all of these things. But over the long period, I personally feel micros are more important than macros. That's just me. Another thing is increase your protein. Okay. That's not counting your macros, just making sure you eat more protein than you ate before. A lot of these diets are extreme plans. You know how hard it is to follow an extreme plan? I don't care what it is. It's hard. And people don't like to do it. And, if they don't set themselves up for success and be super into what they're doing, then extreme plans never work. And I would say probably 99.9% of the time. And what I'll talk about next and I've talked about with some of you before, is one size doesn't fit all. For instance, I had one person that I worked with that we worked together for 2 years, working on his how he ate and stuff like that, got everything, fine-tuned, and he was still having some bloating issues, and for him, this bloating issue, after all that time, was finally figured out between all the people that were working with him. That was chicken that was actually making him feel bloated, which is crazy. I never thought in my mind that chicken would be something that people would have an adverse reaction to. But for this particular person, chicken was the trigger. All right. So, that's another example of how one size doesn't fit all. We can't say, oh, chicken and broccoli, chicken and broccoli. That's what you got to do. Chicken might not work for you. And I can't eat raw broccoli. So there you go. All right. So when you make this shift, that changes everything. When you're able to regulate the things in your life that coincide with your body, then you can increase the energy. Once your energy starts to kick up, then you can start gaining momentum so you can continue to do these good things in your life and set your environment up for success. All right, so here's a little bit about my story. All right, so up on the upper left-hand corner is fat, lethargic, foggy, fatigued Steve. All right, these are the two pictures that really, pop into my mind and that I saw of myself back in 2011, where I said, geez, I gotta do something with myself. I can't be doing this. That's rude to yourself. So, especially this, the brown shirt, it's like, oh my goodness, I'm really filling that thing out. So, and we are in the lenses of our own person. So we are seeing something in the mirror that maybe other people didn't see. Other people might not have said I was fat at that time, but I certainly feel like it. And once I did all these things that I'm going to shortly explain to you, I was feeling so much better. I was able to exercise. I was able to do my cardio. I was able to sustain energy for a long period of time. And these are the two pictures on the right are from two ultra beasts that I did. One when I was 42, which is in the top right. And I got a funny story for that. And I think you'll laugh from that. And down at the bottom is one I recently did, and I finished, third in my age group, which is kind of crazy. The one on the bottom left is a beast that I did fasted. So I didn't eat purposefully from 5 the night before. My race didn't start till about 1 or 2. I went out on the beast course, finished it, and I was pretty happy the whole time. I had a lot of fun that day. It was a really good time. And that was my favorite picture of myself. So, funny story. So, as you can tell in the upper right-hand corner, I am laughing pretty hard. So these are one of those things where you think something might be a good idea, so you give it a good try. So, I obviously had the food dialed in, the exercise dialed in, and somebody suggested, oh, have you ever tried this pre-workout thing? So it's like, no, but I'll give it a shot. So I took this pre-workout in the middle of this race. I don't know what possessed me to do that. Probably just so I can get more water because it had a little bit of flavor in it. So I get to the barbed wire, and as you can see, there's some people like crawling under it. I was rolling under it. And that is about the time where this pre-workout got into my intestines and started wreaking havoc. So every time I rolled, as I went through this barbed wire, I farted. And I would roll one time and I would fart. And then I would roll another time and then I would fart again. I was laughing so hard, I was almost paralyzed underneath this barbed wire. And this guy that was rolling down the barbed wire with me was laughing so hard we couldn't even move it. was probably like 5 or 10 minutes of us laughing so hard and just paralyzed laughter. I haven't laughed that hard probably since. It was just the funniest thing. Hopefully that brought a smile to your face. But the point from this is that I went from being stressed, fatigued, that feeling in my own skin to being able to do these races, even into my mid 50s. This one was just the bottom rate is just short of my 55th birthday. So it's pretty pleased with myself. So, what is midlife momentum? Think of consistency without friction. I talked a little bit about how these other things make some friction, and we the consistency eliminates that friction. So I changed this equation a little bit. If you're familiar with this equation, I changed it just a little bit. So think of momentum as giving your energy times your focus times what's important now. I know Ren knows about this. So let's say our energy is at a 10, our focus is at a 10, and we know what's important now. And this is to the power of consistency. Let's say we're not consistent. So we have a consistency of 0. All right. Does anybody know what 10 times 10 times 10 to the power of 0 is? Anybody know? It's actually 1. So a momentum of 1 probably isn't that good, right? But if your energy is a 10, your focus is a 10, you understand what's important now, which will be a 10. Then to the power, you're always consistent. You're doing the same thing every single day and you're dialed in. So 10 times 10 times 10 to the power of 10 is not 1, is it? It's infinity. So think about that as your momentum. You want an infinite amount of momentum where in your life you are just flowing along seamlessly, knowing how your body works nutritionally as far as exercise goes and how to calm your nervous system. Wouldn't that be kind of like nirvana? It would really be super awesome. You can get that way. Maybe not to infinity momentum, but at least rolling that ball down the hill. All right. So this system's built for this phase of your life. And I would even encourage people that are in their 20s and 30s, if you can dial in this process that early, you're just way better off. I wish I had known a lot more about this when I was 20 and 30 instead of waiting till 40 years old to kind of figure out what in the heck worked for me. That was bullshit, wasn't it? It's frustrating, but we can't live in the past and we're here today. So I got a perfectly good smile on my face and let's roll it. All right. So basically there's 4 pillars that I followed. One was ancestral nutrition. Now I put with the modern twist on here is because obviously the food that we have today is not going to be exactly what our ancestors ate 1,000 years ago, but trying to stay as true to that as possible as we can within the constraints of our reality, which is our modern twist, right? How closely can we stay there? So what do you need to do? Whole foods is probably a good idea for everybody. 1 ingredient food, super important. You don't need to macro count if you're actually eating real good food. Depending on, what your goals are, of course. And there's constant experimentation. Remember I told you the story of the person I worked with that was allergic to chicken. Well, that took 2 years to figure out. So some of these things are long-term things that we need to try to figure out so we can work optimally for our whole lives. And at this point, especially for me at 55, I'm eating for longevity. I'm not eating for instant gratification. I'm not interested in satisfying that instant gratification monkey, which is part of one of my favorite TED Talks. All right. Why this works? Because when you eat real food, that helps boost your energy. When you eat real food, you're giving your body nutrients and hunger subsides because your body's not poking at you, telling you to send down nutrients that you're not giving it when you eat crap food, right? Then you can start burning fat. Then you set up your environment to make it sustainable. So, big concept here is N equals one. So, what works for you is not going to work probably for your partner. You live with someone. What works for you isn't going to work for your son or your mom or your dad or your cousin. Not necessarily. So figuring out what works for you is the whole goal of this game. It's N equals one. You are an experiment. And really, it only you're the one that matters in this game. So when we take care of ourselves, then we are better able to take care of those people that we really, really love or care about or want to care more about, but we don't have the capabilities because we're stuck in our own ruts here. All right, pillar number 2 is movement. So I love this 3x30 movement plan. It's simple, it's effective, it's sustainable. Right? I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Now, if you're training for an event, obviously, working out 3 times a week for 30 minutes is probably not going to be effective enough for you to do, an event like an ultra beast. It's probably not going to happen. So you're probably gonna have to do more of that. But for the general population who's not involved in like running crazy races or races at all, this is going to be really satisfactory for them. And it's simple. And we don't have to play into these things. It's no pain, no gain mentality. If you're older than 40, maybe even younger. I don't know. I haven't surveyed those people that are too much younger than me, but there was this mentality. I remember hearing my coaches in high school say, no pain, no gain. Well, I'm going to call bullshit on that too. Right? It's okay to be a little bit sore. Um, but if you're going to the gym every time and you're sore every time, then who wants that? Who wants to be sore all the time when you're trying to function better in your own environment? I don't want to. Um, you know, Working out 5 to 6 days a week for 60 to 90 minutes, that's, first of all, that's a big time commitment that most people don't have. And if that's your strength training program, 6 days a week, that's hard to maintain. And that's a lot of work to do. And that doesn't give you time enough to do the rest that you need. HIIT programs are another thing. Most HIIT programs are designed for younger people. And, when you start doing these HIIT programs over and over and over again, that causes more stress on your body. More stress on your body causes it to break down faster. Then we got pain, and that kind of pain is something that we have to rest with. Okay, so what's a sustainable plan for each individual person? Well, here we go again. It's N equals one. What works for you? What works for your cousin is going to be different for you. 3 times 30 is a good start. Some clients need to start at 3 times 15 because they are not ready for 30 minutes yet. They can't wrap their mind about doing 30 minutes. 30 minutes seems monumental to some people. So start them small. All right. And there's way more. We can get into the weeds on that, but we're just going to simplify that for today. But sustainable, 30 minutes 3 times a week. Pretty sustainable, right? Why this works? This 3 times 30 works because it allows your body to recover. For me, I run 3 times a week, and it's every other day. Today is my rest day from running. Tomorrow I'll go running. Next day I'll rest. The following day I'll run. So I always let my body recover. There's something called, what's it called? Stone heart or iron heart or something like that, where people that do these long, intense cardio events every single day, like running 10, 15 miles a day, their heart actually hardens because each time they run, they get little micro tears in their heart. And if they don't allow it to recover, then it builds up scar tissue. And then that scar tissue builds and builds and builds upon itself until your heart's solid and it can't beat anymore. So there was a time, probably might have been 70s or and 80s and stuff like that, maybe a little bit after that, where ultra runners would die in their, 50s because their heart just couldn't beat anymore because of all the scar tissue. So, you know, I'm not really interested in that either. Every other day is good for me. Can make it happen. All right. Pillar number 3 is one of my favorites just because it's about nervous system regulation. All right. This is a big chunk that a lot of other personal trainers and coaches just ignore. All right. The chronic stress, inflammation, the disconnection from people, from nature, from a bunch of different things. Having this as part of your plan is super important. So, with your nervous system regulations, that can allow you to sleep better. That can allow you to recover easier. The HIIT training that I talked about before, if your life is already stressful, your relationships are stressful, your eating plan is stressful, how you eat is actually causing more stress, then doing a HIIT program that's going to cause extra stress is just going to compound all of this other stuff. So it's counterintuitive. So we need to be able to regulate our nervous system by working out smarter and taking care of ourselves. So what do? Get your stress management tools. Here I am on top of a mountain in southern Arizona, just meditating on a log. Felt great. The sun felt great. How do you get good at that? You know, you practice and you practice and you practice. I had somebody ask me the other day that, I asked them, well, how are they doing in their work environment? Because they were super stressed. And I said, well, did you give yourself some time to either meditate or take some deep breaths? He said, I don't have time. I was like, do you have two minutes before you go to bed to take a couple deep breaths? Well, yeah. Yeah, he said. Well, that's where you start. And then you practice from there. All right. And there's a bunch of other tools to release stress. And we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But what do these things that you do to regulate your nervous system do? Well, they help reduce inflammation. They improve your sleep. They increase your energy. And it makes all these other things sustainable. I got a little inflammation story for you. So I did this detox program with some people a while back, a few years back. It was 5 days. So it's basically cleaning up your garbage out of your diet for 5 days. And this one guy lost 13 pounds in 5 days. And his wife was all pissed off because, he's a guy, he can just lose all the weight real fast. But, it really wasn't about that. It was the way this person was eating was just causing tons and tons of inflammation and fluid retention and stuff like that. And once that diet got super clean for, a couple days, then that inflammation started coming off. It was crazy. And then by the end of that 5 days, he lost 13 pounds and it wasn't fat. I'm thinking you might be able to lose a pound or two of fat in a week, maybe, but 13 pounds tells me that most of that was inflammation that he got rid of. just by changing up his food. So imagine if he changed up his exercise and how he worked on his nervous system and his sleep and all these other things. What could happen? It's like, it's a miracle. Take some time for yourself. All right. So, what are some reconnection practices that everybody else ignores? All right. A lot of people don't talk about what makes you, what gives you purpose, what brings you joy. What are your connections? Do you play? I don't think I've ever heard personal trainer when I was in a gym ask anybody, what's your play? Just let you ruminate on that in a second. And a lot of people don't think about it as a lifestyle. It's got to be a lifestyle. And I don't know about you, but once you get to a certain age, it is not about vanity anymore. It's about lifestyle. All right. There are, 1% of people that are working out in their 60s and 70s for vanity's sake and they're ripped and stuff like that. But for the most part, people just want to be able to move around easier. They want to be able to live in their environment easier. They want to be able to take a hike if they want to, and people are ignoring these things. Can't ignore them. So how do you make connections? What are those modalities? Connecting with nature. I know some of you on the call right now go out and take hikes in nature. We've been on this planet for 2 million years, if you believe in evolution. Most of that time we were outside. It's only very recently that most of the time that we spend is on the inside. So why do we do that? We got to get outside. We belong out there. Social connections. Since COVID and since we got these stupid phones, social connection is lacking. I mean, that face-to-face social connection. We don't participate that as much as we used to. So sometimes we got to make that intentional. What about self-connection? You ever connect with yourself? Super important. Do you know what your play is? That's super important too. I remember, why is play such a big thing? Why is that part of my modalities? You may think it's the Spartan race thing, because that is play. That's just a lot of fun. But what I was able to do after I changed all of these things was figure out what my play was, and at the time I started playing Ultimate Frisbee, and that was so much fun. I was overjoyed playing Ultimate Frisbee. And that turned out to be my play for about 10 years. And the reason why I don't play is a bunch of different reasons, but that is going to be for another day. So why does that work? Well, this allows you to connect to your deeper why. It allows you to reconnect with your life, those people around you, the environment, and make meaningful connections. And that's what it's about. We've come out of this COVID thing. People are lonelier, people are more isolated. People need to go back to making those meaningful connections to give themselves purpose. Because if you just hang out by yourself all the time, it's easy to go into this deep, dark hole and just lose yourself in your own thoughts. But connecting with people and nature, keeps that mind active. So why personalization wins? Because we have to kind of figure out what is the trail that best fits for you. All right. Back to this N equals 1. This adaptation to your life creates momentum. Which trail are you going to choose? And you're going to be on this trail, and this trail is only going to be for you because you're an individual. And figuring out what you need is different, like I said, for everybody else that's with you. All right. So, in a bonus, with working on this midlife momentum program is constant connection and the accountability that my program provides to people, and it beats isolation, and it helps people to be accountable and connect with their coach almost instantly. Within reason, I got to sleep right. So why is constant connection important? We don't have to wait. If you got questions, you can ask. That eliminates the overwhelm of all of these decisions that you need to make. Remember one person I was worked with, he was in college and he would like, he's at the store and he was like, oh, is this compliant? Is that compliant? I mean, he didn't overdo it, but he asked me a few questions about things and I was able to give him the answers really quick because of that communication I have with my clients. What changes first when you do all these things? Clarity, energy, confidence, being able to hike these mountains. I know some of you do that out there. So, and being your own individual and breathing the fresh air. Isn't that great? It's really awesome. So in 12 weeks, I've definitely had people lose 10 to 25 pounds or be a lot stronger or be more confident in their own skin. And I've heard that from several surveys that I put out there that confidence is a big thing. When you add a little bit extra weight and you're lethargic and you've kind of gone down the rabbit hole of eating bad stuff, then your confidence suffers too. So this momentum also helps with the confidence. So why is that important? Because it's, confidence and, that self-care is bigger than weight. And the weight is just kind of, I don't know. I just think that the weight is just, extra stuff. It's a nice added benefit of getting all of these other things under control. So what does that help you do? It helps you be more present. It helps you be capable of taking care of other people that you love. And it gives you purpose. Purpose is a big thing, especially as we get to our 70s and 80s. There's a lot of people that I know that have retired and lose their sense of purpose because they're not going to work anymore. They don't have any family members to take care of anymore. So finding that purpose is, a lot of times more important than weight. So these are two people I care about a lot. So what's your next step? So there's nowhere to download the guide right now, but I will send you that guide on how you can take the first steps in organizing your life so you can be more productive and be the person that you know that you can be the best version of yourself and have that vision of yourself moving forward. The optimal version of yourself. So this is another reminder. You're not broken. You're just ready to go into the next step of your life, the next phase of your life, or hug a tree. All right, so this is my invitation to you. If you choose to do a program with me, these are the things that you'll get. Some of you worked with me in the past. That 30-minute coaching session every week. Goal setting, mental vitamins. I love to call them, those things, those little gems that we need in order to thrive. The blueprint that I'm actually going to send you today, health and fitness plans, if that's what you need. I have a tracking app for you to track whatever you need to keep track of to hold yourself accountable, whatever that looks like for you. The app allows you to have access to me whenever you need it. And eventually, inner circle access for people so they can come together that work with me and let's say commiserate. And I say that in total jest. All right, so my program outline is as follows. Now, You might be saying to yourself as you see this, okay, well, this is not what he said the whole time. All right, where n equals 1. So, this is just general topics that I love to talk about when working with clients. And these are not necessarily in order because they're going to come up differently for different people. But that vision and goal setting is obviously some things that have to happen first in order for us to develop a plan for your wellness. You have to have a vision of yourself, in an optimal world. The goal setting comes in smaller hunks. So you have a big vision of yourself. Maybe that's 6 months, a year, 5 years down the road. And now we need to build those little goals so we can build on that to get to that perfect version of ourselves. Stress reset, turning down that background noise, learning how to do that. Sometimes we need to focus on that before all of the other things happen. Those ancestral nutrition foundations that I talked about before. How do we do this movement plan? That's simple. AM and PM bookends. I'm going to leave that as a surprise for those of you that don't know that, because that can be weeks all in and of itself. But dialing those in is super important. How do you recover? This is personal. How can you regenerate your injuries or little aches and pains and recover from those? What's your nature connection? Who's your tribe? What's your play? Are you joyful? Do you give yourself gratitude? And are you grateful for those other things around you? What's your purpose? What's your self-care plan? Now, personally, I consider every single thing on this list part of your self-care plan. A lot of people don't think of it like that, but I feel like your nutrition is self-care. I feel like exercise is self-care. I feel like sleep is self-care. I feel like recovery is self-care. Nature connection is self-care. In my mind, it's all self-care. So, and then at the end of the program, then we talk about how can we make this sustainable for the future? What extra support do you need moving forward? Anybody have any questions on that? That's a lot of fun stuff. Love talking about all that stuff. All right, we're closing in on the end here. So, what's the investment here? All right, you're not investing in me. I'm your guide on the side. Say I'm your Dumbledore, right? You're making that investment for yourself. I'm a Ravenclaw, so I'd have to rethink that a little. Maybe I'm a Helena Ravenclaw, maybe. But anyway, you're investing in yourself. So it's an easy way to, make payments as you go through or pay it all at once. And as you're thinking about this, imagine having all these things dialed in over 12 weeks, or at least most of them dialed in. Think about your return on investment. The return, some of the returns on investment you're not going to see for a long time. But they could be hundreds and thousands of dollars down the line. So this investment in yourself is nothing compared to, $100,000 medical bills down the line because you didn't do this hard work at this point in your life. So thinking about that investment in yourself as far as that goes, and not, investing in this program. Well, it's not an investment in the program, it's an investment in yourself. All right. What questions do you have? Any kind of questions? Love to hear them.
No questions, just a comment. I love the setup of your program. It looks amazing.
Oh, thank you.